What is your team for everything? A very interesting topic that was put on the forums, and a lot of people actually kind of like put some info as to like, you know, team creation that they do. Some with synergization, some with non-synergization. And let's face it, a Marvel Contest of Champions, when we're playing, it's going to be a case that not all champions are going to fit the gaps, the issues, the problems, the nodes we go up against, and we're having to always kind of like, you know, change it up with kind of configurations. But largely there will be like a certain amount of champions that you personally enjoy, which will rotate through usage and create a team around. Like from my personal perspective, I run through two types of teams to deal with certain situations, or just based on interaction and just kind of like taking stuff down, which consists of Dr. Doom, power control obviously, and suppression of buffs. King Groot, because I like the way of him building buffs and also throwing debuffs, which can have like a double effect of taking on things like diss track or buffed up or any kind of the different variations of them. Magneto, because let's face it, a lot of the champions you face off in Marvel Contest of Champions are #metal, so some of those interactions are relatively fun and, you know, it interacts quite well. Falcon, because he deals with evade based champions and reducing down defensive ability accuracy by 100%, which means he can be really helpful in situations where, say, autoblock is triggered as part of the defensive ability of an enemy champion. And Warlock, because of the double immunities that he has, or triple I think, or quadruple immunities that he has, as well as his rotations around the arm break on SP2 and shock of SP1, power control of SP1, his parry heavy, which is bleed. So there's lots of different things going for the champion. The fact that he also has an armor up, which means if I go up against a sneaky Havoc, he can be that that kind of like interaction right there. So that's Team A, and that does bits, and that does like just so much that I need to do. And Team B. Team B looks like this. It's Apocalypse, it's Archangel, because the link there with kind of creating the Horseman, but as well like Apocalypse I like using as a solo champion as well, with the amazing amount of debuff damage. Black Widow Clairvoyant is my alternate to a Doctor Doom scenario. With King Groot and Dr. Doom, they spend most of their time in things like Alliance quests, so having some other champions, which I do have alternate versions that I could bring up a 5-star, but I think it's nice to, like, you know, just change it up a little bit. Adding in Corvus Glaive. Now that team there, that 4, is normally my side quest defeating team. As I said, with the first team, Team A, a good portion of it spending time in things like AQ and alliance-based participation. It's nice to have a Team B that you like and use for everything. There's sufficient coverage on this one to deal with several different scenarios, whether or not it's evade suppression with the likes of Apocalypse. We've also got some elements of taking down having bleed immunity and having incinerate immunity at certain points. Corvus Glaive facilitates extra immunities as well as a kick-ass amount of damage and also extra interaction if I need it. The reason that there's one slot that's not there is that because this is always filled up by whatever, you know, I'm interested in playing. It may be a case of going, oh well, I'll put Spider-Man 2099 in, I'll put Medusa in because I love the 6-star version, Cosmic Ghost Rider will go in, Human Torch because of an interaction with a Mystic, and then there's ones like Mr. Fantastic. There might be some other change-ups I'll do with Guillotine 2099 going over, Ghost for example, and one of my recent additions, which is Hercules rank 4 3-star, rank 3 6-star. But yeah, like as I said, like, those two teams cover a lot of the base. And now let's not talk about me, but let's talk about, you know, the other kinds of options and examples that players have, because it's always interesting. But I can imagine a lot of reasons for choosing certain champions is very much kind of covering certain things. Like there we see Dr. Doom, Hercules again, Nick Fury as well as another one that I rotate out of and in several times, especially with a lot of champions being, you know, Avengers and things like that. Magneto, because yeah, like #metal. There's tons. This player in particular does Apoc, Archangel, like myself. Doom, Nick Fury, and Vulture is a regular one. It's always good to see other champions like Vulture into the mix. But also you can't escape the fact that Tigra, Kingpin, Immortal Abomination, which is, funny enough, a lot of these champions, especially Immortal Abomination, I used a lot in an AQ path that I did, I think in map 7. Now that we're doing map 8, I always kind of have the same teams that go into there. And Warlock, actually, because now is a new usage, I've had to kind of emphasize more on using a 6-star version and a 5-star version. This is where you can see my rank 3 6-star version of Warlock there. And also I've got my 5-star version right there, because I need them for multiple bits of content. But if one's an AQ for the day, then and I want to use the 5-star version, at least I can now have a split in a similar direction. Yes, I could use other champions, but sometimes it's always nice to use the ones that you like, and having 2 versions, a 5-star and a 6-star version, so higher rarity and rank, it means that you can spread things out. Also, Carrot says Tigra, Jabari, and Kitty make a pretty sweet trio, though I tend to run them in AW and AQ when I can. So again, it's nice to see different kind of variations. This is the team here for this player, for Hirish and Dr. Doom. Cable as well, I think that's to play into the Apocalypse. I am liking Nimrod at the moment. I'm using Nimrod a lot more for other things and kind of like, you know, just vibing with it. I think it's sometimes I'm not a massive fan of new champions to the game unless they have something kind of like really unique to them. But yeah, I'm really kind of liking Nimrod, and I'm sure that I'll kind of like to play Hercules a bit more than I am at the moment. But it's always difficult when you've got your favorite team that covers everything, and you're not trialing out a few things. This is why variants are fun, because then you kind of not get forced to use champions, but it's nice to kind of see other ones that you could potentially use. But I always like seeing new and kind of like different ideas for stuff. I mean, doesn't take away from the fact Shang-Chi is pretty amazing. Cap Infinity War, it's good to see that champion being brought into the forefront, especially if you're looking to create a team with him as the kind of the quintessential champion. 200 signature version, a broad spectrum of classes in your team can really like produce a massive performance from Cap Infinity War. Also, and by the name Fit Fun, this is fun. Groot, Kamala, Drax, Cyclops, Heimdall, but only for synergy. This team shreds. But I quite like the fact of seeing champions again being used that not many people would put in there. Black Panther, so I assume that's the OG version. That's pretty cool. As I say, Cap Infinity War's there. Guardian and Sasquatch. Now, I knew back along Sasquatch had some issues when it came to like rupture damage numbers, so I assume that's all sorted. And Guardian, I do like the build up around the champion, which is pretty cool. But yeah, they're not really kind of my cup of tea. But Silver Centurion is kind of like a cool honorable mention. I do have a lot of kind of positive things around that, and especially with the team as it is covering again broad spectrum. Whether or not we've got and again depending on if Captain Infinity War is awakened, you can see some really good like suppression of things, petrify with having a tech on the team, and also like what happens to science, weakness, and other ones. So there's a lot of like cool interaction right here, and having Silver Centurion there. So you got like slow debuff with that can be brought in to kind of suppress things like evade. Good coverage here with suppression of buffs with Sasquatch, I think with parry heavy and getting nullify. So there's a lot of things on offer. Again, love seeing things like Kingpin, Hood, for example. I mean, Hood with great kind of like buff suppression. Mr. Fantastic is an absolute G, and Diablo, of course, with kind of his poison damage and other stuff he can do. Elsa, Tigra, Kitty, Ghost, Wasp. Again, great. Also, 007 Bishop, which he does have a Bishop in there, has Angela and Doc Ock. Doc Ock, after using him for a recent Karina's challenge, I did find that champion relatively enjoyable. But it's good to see obscure ones. Shang-Chi again here, Bishop, of course, great champion, and Angela. Angela's like a standout champion, really decent. Depending on what you want to do with the champion, if you want to have a high signature version, which I personally, I'm kind of warming to more, especially if I've got mine up to like 130, 150. I'm more tempted to get a bit further, especially with having the more buffs you have, the more percentage interaction you have for suppression of certain things. And I think it's debuff suppression as well that you might have on you. I can't really remember. Man, there's 200 plus champions to try and remember. But yeah, basic questing from this player is Moon Knight, Deadpool, X-Force, Guillotine, Venom, and Dark Orc. Again, good to see like some obscure ones out there. But yes, it's pretty cool to see. This was an interesting forum thread, right? And especially to see like what players were using. There's a lot of like repetition, and let's face it, there's just a lot of the quintessential champions a lot of players do indeed go for. But it is good to see, like, at least there's players out there that are using, ones outside the box. And I'm sure that a lot of players like myself would have about 1, 2, maybe 3 teams they rotate around as regular ones, especially when you got to deal with side quests. Very different nowadays when it comes to things like Cavalier difficulty, which for me personally, my kind of like strategy behind it is that I will normally load in you know, champions from the same class, I'll go like, okay, well, there's 3 path clearers, and then there's like 2. I always bring in 2 boss champions or boss counter champions. The reason being, if I get like lag or there's kind of like something that goes wrong, then I've got a backup. 3 to clear the path, 2 for the boss. It's just kind of like ease of doing that. Some people will differ from that. They'll kind of go more quintessential about synergies for creation of team, and they may even kind of go like, okay, well, I'll take out, you know, 1 champion in particular, and then kind of look to have like a synergization instead that maybe wouldn't like apply, and go like, okay, well, I'll put, you know, that champion in order to synergize in a different way. But it's down to a player and personal perspective how you choose to kind of create a team around. But it is always very interesting to see, like, you know, team creations. Man, look at Immortal Abomination, such a chunky boy. He kind of overshadows King Groot. And King Groot do be a chunky boy. Yeah, as I said, it's interesting and fun to see the different creations of team and who's using for what. Nice to hear Killmonger being mentioned and Nebula. So that's pretty nice. Do bear in mind as well, like, depending on the type of mastery set you have, whether or not it be a standard one, which I have and, you know, many other people have, or a suicide mastery set, it will mean that your team will differ as to the interaction around those bleed and poison debuffs that come on you, whether or not you're purifying or shrugging them off as part of a basic champion kit, which amplifies the damage. It's always very different player to player. And the question I'm going to throw into the comment section is, what is your team or teams for everything? Do you have a team A, team B, team C? Is that really you, or are you more kind of like, I want to study the nodes first before putting a team together? Very interesting forum thread. If you do want to interact with it, I'll put a link in the description down below. Thank you very much for watching this video. We have got a spicy crystal opening coming up later on, which should be with my good friend Fizz. We're hopefully going to be seeing some spicy champions being opened, so come back to the channel later on for that, and I'll see you later on. Have a lovely Tuesday. Bye bye.